Hey everybody, my name is Dan Clark, as you know, and I just want to thank you for purchasing my course, and I hope it's helped you a lot. I hope it's helped you look at things differently and be able to process things differently so that you can move forward in your life. I'm really grateful that you took that step. Today, I wanted to make this bonus video for you because I wanted to tell you a little bit about my story and where I'm at now and where I was back then. But it wasn't long back, and I also want to talk about the choices that I made that got me to where I am today, as opposed to a lot of people who get stuck in the religion and never get out. So anyway, I want to just take you back to my childhood. I grew up just outside of Detroit, Michigan, about 20 miles out, and I grew up in a two-bedroom house. I had four brothers in one room and a mom and dad. My mother was schizophrenic and had nervous breakdowns every 3 years, and my dad worked out of town. So we would literally, at times have to chase my mother down the road, call my dad back in from out of town, and then put my mother in the hospital, and then we'd go visit her, and then Dad would go back to work out of town. And it was really a tough life. I spent most of my life visiting my mom inside of a ward and watching my dad cry. Later in life, I grew up, I got in lots of trouble. I got into alcohol. I got into all sorts of things, trying to bury this. And of course, I was born and raised a Jehovah's Witness. So we grew up making 5 meetings a week. As you know, we had the door-to-door, we had the theocratic ministry school, we had the watchtower meetings, the Bible study meeting, and all these sorts of things. And we were totally consumed by it, but we were kind of the ones that were kind of weak and always had to sit in the back of the hall, and the elders visited us, and we just were never doing that good. Well, when I got older, I kind of broke away a little bit. I was still a Jehovah's Witness, but I wasn't baptized. And when I got older, I got baptized and got back in and became a ministerial servant and started serving in that capacity within the congregation. And then I started to really tune into some of these prophecies. I was really heavily involved in the generation prophecy, and that the world was going to end 70 or 80 years from 1914, and of course it didn't. And I got disillusioned and I got discouraged, and I said I was going to leave. So I put in my letter to the congregation because I didn't want to lie, and I told them, I was going to leave the organization. And I did. They read my letter, and I was basically out by myself, alone, angry, frustrated, depressed, didn't know where to go. I really didn't think the shunning was going to be that serious when I got out, but it was. And anyway, long story short, I got back into alcohol again, and it really took me down low. And then I just lost everything. I just completely was like wiped out, and I had this surrendered moment. Where I just sort of said, God help me, I've lost my house, I've lost my cars, I've lost everything, and I can't seem to break these disabling religious beliefs within the religion that I was in. It was kind of like I was out physically, but mentally I wasn't out. I still had a lot of deprogramming to do, and I didn't really have anybody to help me. Excuse me. And then one day, I was working on a house, and there was a lady there. And she was a very interesting lady, very profound, wore a big black, gown with a red scarf around her, very powerful demeanor. And I told her, I said, I think, I'm leaving my religion and that sort of thing. And she says, great, I was just in the shower praying that, I could help somebody. So this lady comes into my life, an older lady, and she was offering me all this assistance, helping me break down understandings about the blood, about Jehovah's name, about all these things that were like hooks in me so I couldn't move forward, meaning I would be in another church and I would think, well, they're only using the name Jesus. They're not using Jehovah. So I would think I'm in the wrong place or whatever, spiritual center. I was scared. The very first church that I went into, I literally thought my hand was going to burn off the door handle, because we were told every religion out there was the world empire of false religion, Babylon the Great. And so I literally thought my hand was going to burn off when it touched the handle. Well, it didn't. And when I went in there, I found a lot of great love. It was more of a spiritual center. It was like Science of Mind or Unity, and just places where you hear more lectures and stuff. They're really not throwing Bible scriptures at you, but they're maybe throwing spiritual things. They might say a Bible scripture. They might say Paramahansa Yogananda, Buddha. It could be any tradition they could share with you. Well, I went in there for a while and I got healed up. I started studying tons and tons of books on spirituality, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christian mysticism, Paramahansa Yogananda. I mean, I could go on. Hundreds of books, and just started opening all the pages and just started to see, just started to connect with a bigger picture than what the witnesses told me. And I realized, oh my God, there's a lot of traditions and religions outside of Jehovah's organization, outside of this Watchtower organization. So I started writing about it. I started writing about my journey. And the very first book that I wrote was this one here. It was called Eyewitness, The Shocking Insider Story of Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I wrote about my journey there, and what I discovered was that God was not a religion. God was a spirit. And then when I had the big surrender moment, I had a monstrous surrender moment where it seemed like I ushered in all heaven. Everything completely changed. My finances were fivefold, and if you can imagine, 50,000 fivefold. I met my wife. I had gifts that I never received. So I had this surrender moment. So I wanted to show you the second book that I wrote. Well, it's called Surrender, Your Key to the Kingdom Within. And that was the second book I wrote. And, here I am. I'm becoming an author. I never thought I'd be an author. I was waiting for the world to end. But what I want to tell you is this, was I chose to dismantle those disabling beliefs. A lot of people don't. And that's why they don't move forward. They stay back they stay in those ideals. They never really get them out of here. And because they don't ever get free. They have one foot still in the organization and one foot still out. In other words, their body's out, but their mind is still in. Well, what that causes is a split mind. You have to dismantle those beliefs. You have to go back and take a look at those beliefs and put them in the light of reason. Look at the organization in the light of reason. Look at their track record over 100 years. Look at the prophecies they've been sharing and the false prophecies. So, you have to dismantle the fact that this is God's organization on earth. You've got to get that out of your head. And if you don't, you'll never be free. You'll never be able to go forward. And I don't believe you'll ever be able to become the person God meant you to be. So the reason I'm showing you these books is once I started to dismantle these things, once that lady started helping me go through and dismantle and break down, I was getting freer and freer. And I thought, wow, I can do all sorts of things. I can write. I'm an author. I'm a business owner, a successful business owner. I still own Upscale Wood Finishing, Upscale Kitchen Refinishing till this day. And then I wrote a book, and then I saw the bigger picture, which was there was an order to this alchemy, I call it. Whenever somebody can manifest things, I call it alchemy, where you can convert nothing into something. They call people at Harvard financial alchemists, okay? So when you're just a regular person and you can do things fairly quickly, they say that's alchemy. But we're always creating alchemy, whether it's positive or negative. So the next book that I wrote was called The Divine Order of Alchemy, The Ancient Secret to Union with God. And that's my third book. And these started to come just like that. It was like, this book was written in 30 days. This book was written in 30 days. This book took a little longer because there was some healing involved. And then this here, I had a bunch of miracles that happened one time. And you're going to get this. You're going to get this in the program. Grace by Miracles, Prospering in Times of Uncertainty. And that's my quote there. It says, grace can move like a feather what would otherwise be impossible for the mind. Dan Clark. And so I realized the power of grace and the power of surrender. So these two things here are very powerful for invoking grace, for invoking God's favor, for invoking archangels. I have heard so many stories of people who have moved into a surrendered state and invoked an archangel, and just a glance changed their whole life 360 degrees. So, not only was I able to do those things along with my business, I started a series. It was called, it's my wood finishing business. I started a series of DVDs. It was winter time one day, and I decided, it was blizzard out, so I scratched out on a piece of paper that I'm Dr. Dan. I've got, 25, 30 years. Now I've got 39 years, but at the time I had 25 years, and I thought, well, I can be called a doctor. So I called myself Dr. Dan, and then I set up Dr. Dan Trade Secrets, and I made these DVDs. And these DVDs is what helped me move from Denver to here. They paid for me while I got set up here in Boise. And so these were just things. I'm not showing you to brag or anything, but I am saying this. It was because I got free that I was able to do any of this stuff. If I wouldn't have got free, I would have been like so many of the witnesses, a victim. And what we got to watch out is victim will creep up on you. Victim is where you tell your story. And I want to say this with all due respect, but we all have a time to tell our story, and to tell it a lot of times. I think I told mine for 5 years, pretty heavily. But what I realized was that if I continued to say it, then I was like pulling this train of junk. I was pulling it into relationships and everything. So I did this class one time called An Inner Child Journey. And it was just where a bunch of people that were hurting got together, and they all were going to work with facilitators and tell their story and all that sort of thing. And so anyway, I joined this thing, and there's about 300 people. We're all in there crying and talking about our past, and I realized I didn't really have that big a problem as many as most people had. Yeah, I had a schizophrenic mother. Yes, I got beat by my dad. Yes, I had alcohol. But there were people that had it a lot worse than me, and a lot more religious abuse than I had. Well, once I looked around that room and saw all these people crying and stuff, and some of them have been crying for 25 years, 30 years. I said, oh my God. I said, they've lived their whole life. They've been out of this thing, relationships, they've been out of this religion for 30 years, and they're still telling a story like it was yesterday. Then I realized that was a victim. That's what they call victim consciousness. And what I realized is victim consciousness has very low energy. It gets you sympathy, but it doesn't pay any more than that. And so I caught myself a couple times that I would be in a room and everyone would be talking. And then when everyone was done talking, I couldn't wait to say, now let me tell you about my story. Let me tell you about how horrible things have been for me. And you know what? It didn't pay nothing. Eventually people didn't want to be around me because I was telling my story. And then I realized you could tell it till you were in a halfway house. You could tell it till you die. I could be angry until I died. So anyway, this surrender that I was in, this practice of surrender, changed quite a bit. I was able to let go of my anger. I was able to let go of depression. I was able to let go of my victimization. And when I did, I flourished. I just flew the other way. I started writing books. I started doing courses. I started doing this. And then finally, last but not least, I started to paint. And I could show you some of my paintings here. You can see. These are just a few. And as you can see, they're not perfect, but you know what? It's a skill I never knew I had. And that's why I wanted to do this bonus video for you, because I want you to know that most of you is still up on the shelf and needs to be pulled down. And there's great opportunity for you. But do this work. Do this dismantling work. get the hooks out. I met a lady not long ago, and she was looking at one of my books in one of the New Thought churches I was in, visiting. I was giving a talk there, and the lady looked at my book, and she was an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and she almost fell over. And I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "You quoted from the King James Version." And I said, "Yeah, so?" She says, "That's not the New World Translation." And I said, "Oh my God, oh my God." The lady's still in the organization, and she's been in this New Thought church for 15 years. And you know what happened to her? Her walking started to get real funny. She started to get crippled up. Her hands started to curl up, and all these things. And it was because she didn't get this free. And that's what I want to tell you today, guys. We had a temple built within this temple. The Watchtower built a temple within us. And it was a temple of beliefs. And they're the ones who are the governors of our temple, because we were told not to trust anybody but them. They were our governors. They're the faithful and discreet slave to watch over us. They're the ones who pull our strings. They're the ones we go to when we have a problem. We've never learned to think, talk, or walk on our own. So I want to tell you, when you first come out of an organization like this, when you're on your own, you're on your own. You're having to stand on your own 2 feet. There's no watchtower to tell you what to do. There's no elders to tell you what to do. There's no nothing to tell you what to do other than your heart. And that's why I tell people, follow your heart. But the reason I showed you all this today, guys, all this stuff, isn't to brag. I also live in a nice home here just outside of Boise on a beautiful river. I have a big, beautiful river right outside my door. I have a shop in the back, a prayer room, and all sorts of things. And the reason for this is I never got stuck. I never got stuck. So I just want to tell you people today, if you're feeling stuck, meditate, surrender. If you haven't got my book, pick it up, or I'll send it to you free as a PDF. And read that book, because once you get free, you're going to be the greatest gift that you can give to this world. And you know what? We're here for a reason. We're here to bring forth those gifts. And you know something? After we've come through the refiner's fire of our religious ideals, you've been through a fire. You've been cast. There's a piece of gold. There's a diamond. There's a spiritual element in you now that you're here to deliver to the world. So don't let it be buried. It's time to unearth the gold within you. And that's why I wanted to share this video, because sky's the limit. You're made in God's image and likeness. I mean, think about that. That's so powerful. You're made in God's image and likeness. And all of God wants to pour through you in a unique way, unlike anybody else. Just like our fingerprints are all different. Every fingerprint is completely different. So is the print of who you are. There is no two of you, and there will be no two of you ever again. So anyway, I just wanted to do this video for you. I want you to know I'm here for you always. I'm here always. You can even call me direct, and we can talk. But let's get you moved through this thing so that you can start to create the life that God intends you to create. And let's let this Jehovah's Witness, let's just let it be a chapter. Let's don't let it be the whole book, because life's waiting for you. Life needs you, and God needs you, I feel. I feel you are a possibility in the mind of God. You were birthed here, and that's a beautiful thing. And anyway, that's all I want to say today. And again, thank you for purchasing the course. And if you have any questions, anything that needs answers, anything you need dismantled, I was a Jehovah's Witness 40 years, as you know. You can ask me. I got out. I know a lot of other people have gotten out, and I can maybe help you dismantle a few things so you can get free. All right, that's it. Thank you so much, and look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks again. Bye-bye.